Welcome back, everyone. This week in engineering, we're going to be talking about
Teenage vaping, and among those being marijuana and the concerns that it raises about addiction,
ultralight gloves that let users touch virtual objects,
along with electrical enhancements allowing engineers to speed up electrons inside semiconductors,
and how to defend against Spectre and meltdown attacks by breaking up cache memory.
and a little bit of a funny article off the beaten path of STEM, but I figured why not?
I'm Josh,
This is Grayson.
and welcome to Delta Y.
Alright, so for our first article regarding teen vaping of marijuana, this actually raises a lot of concerns about addiction. This experimentation is actually going to be putting developing brains at risk, since the brain itself has been proven not to fully develop until ages 25 to around 30. Josh, you want to take this one?
I absolutely can. So Ecigs are, a widely distributed thing above teens, and even though the legal age is going to be it's set at 18, there's thousands upon thousands of high schoolers that get a hold of these through older friends or simply just buying them online. And the thing is, now you can buy THC capsules for them or THC juice, which is the primary component of marijuana that makes it so potent of what it is. It's definitely going to be an interesting thing to see how this actually does affect kids, because it is a concern. Because people don't stop developing brains till 25. Legal smoking age is 18. Legal drinking age is 21. At least here in these states, and we have to consider that because that's a medically defined term.
Nearly 9 in every 100 students, according to the article, reported vaping marijuana. Among those who had used e-cigs before, that number rose to more than 30 in every 100.
And we also have to consider, it is classed as a highly risky drug by the government, which is a very old classification. And we've proven nowadays that that classification is, scientifically off.
Well, okay, I did a research paper on, well, not really research paper, I did a lot of research on this and wrote a paper on this in high school regarding how e-cigs aren't actually better than cigarettes. They're about the same. You're putting pretty much the same kind of chemicals in your body. You've got formaldehyde, which is probably one of the bigger ones in there, and then you've got this THC stuff here. THC from marijuana has been increasing in potency and percentage over the past 20 years. So originally we would have had CBD and THC, the two main chemicals of marijuana. That THC has been growing in both percentage of, I guess, how much it is in the oil, and the CBD is decreasing. So you're getting more THC than you would be in CBD. So you're not really getting balance with those two.
The balance isn't there, and I think the thing that makes this topic so sensitive right now is Canada just legalized weed. Many states are either they have legalized, California, Washington, Colorado, and there's other states pushing for it.
Yeah.
And even some senators nowadays are like getting into the cannabis business. They're working towards, I think, being on the financial path towards legalization. It's the moral path of a lot of states in this country that keeps them from legalizing it immediately. Canada, in my mind, is a much more progressive, forward country that has more open minds. Whereas the States, we down here have some people who have more closed minds, but, it's the people who have closed minds who help, move the government in the way that they do. And the two-party system down here works amazingly, but sometimes you get that divide where, there are Republicans. They're like, the cannabis business would give this, and this to our country. We'd have this much money, this much money increase. We'd have a booming economy from it, and there'd be a whole new trade option.
Well, what impact is this going to have on the kids?
And
whether or not we ban this or we legalize it, either way, there's still going to be people that are going to find a way to access this, and that's the main issue of the article, is that with how many students are actually having access to this. We already know that cannabis is a gateway drug to abusive drugs like heroin and methamphetamine and cocaine.
And it's definitely worse on younger kids who haven't developed their brains fully, and it's worse on younger kids who haven't matured enough to understand that this could lead. I think in the hands of an adult, it's safe enough where an adult, won't go immediately to oh, this is good. Maybe I should try heroin. Adults have more restraint in their thoughts, so they are less likely to be gatewayed into this, especially if they were raised in a different way than a heroin addict. A lot of heroin addicts are raised in lower income where they aren't taught that restraint as much as middle to higher income. And we've seen that legalization. It hasn't led to more heroin users in like Colorado has been legal for quite a few years now, and you haven't seen the increase in more illegal drugs. It's just been an increase in marijuana usage. But I definitely think that if younger kids get their hands on this, it's definitely going to lead to more drug users at a younger age because younger kids' brains aren't developed. They don't have the consequences built into them yet.
Prefrontal cortex isn't still fully developed yet.
Yeah, and they just have this free-for-all attitude, I think. A lot of kids I've seen, and a lot of kids that are younger than me, when I got out of high school, I was still in high school. You could see back and you could see that the middle schoolers, as we go forward, I think kids are getting more free for all. And I think it's because they're growing up in an age where they have access to so much information.
So much information that they're not making the right decisions with it.
Exactly. I mean, their parents aren't raising them as much as the world is raising them. And that leads me to some concerns. Like, are these kids going to be able to stay away from these drugs? And I think the reason I'm concerned about that is we do have underage drinking. We have underage drug use, smoking. Will this lead to underage marijuana use?
Oh, definitely. I mean, how much? What's the one? The Juul, that Jull. That's the little vaping pen. Kids have been hiding those in like Sharpie markers and stuff, and vaping those in bathrooms in high schools. Yeah, I had a couple of those in my high school too.
And I mean, it's all like, and it's such a new thing that it's being hotly debated still. Like, Juul has gone under, like, they're a big company now. They've been selling these things for a while, and they know what they're doing. They know how to sell these. But they've come under flack recently, like, is this safe for kids? Are you doing the right thing to protect younger kids from getting this? Because, you can buy them online. You have to be 18, but it's the internet. I mean, anybody can be 18 on the internet. That's the trick.
Yeah.
And so, you have to ask, are they really, really working to, make this a safer environment for kids if they do legalize this? And the idea is that how can we get kids, away from these dangerous drugs more? Is there a way that we can? I think it's definitely how you raise your child that teaches them not to do this. Teaching them that being cool doesn't matter if you're following what everyone else does. Because what we're seeing, I think what we're seeing here is a cascading effect, like a domino effect, where one popular kid starts doing it, everybody follows up. It's because in high school, into middle school, high school, this starts to break up, especially in the upper class years, where everyone wants to be like the cool kid.
Yep.
No one wants to be underneath them. And so I think that, definitely in middle schoolers and younger high schoolers, this is a danger. I don't think once you get up towards 18 years of age, it becomes as big of an issue because kids start to, at that point, they're not as much kids. And if they're in a good household, they start to understand, look, I'm going to be an adult soon. I have to make good choices with my life. I can't be making choices that damage me in this sense. And that's why I think we've seen a reduction in smoking. But the problem is I think that reduction in smoking has gone straight to vaping.
Well, yeah, because e-cigarette, that just disarms the idea of it being harmful because cigarettes naturally, the way they're created, contain hundreds and hundreds of harmful chemicals. When you hear e-cigarette, oh, that's something different. That's something that shouldn't be as harmful, right? No, it contains formaldehyde. It contains all these chemicals that when heated up and inhaled into your body, you're essentially inhaling toxic chemicals that you can't really understand. You don't really understand the consequences of that because there haven't been a lot of studies on how bad this technology really is. I mean, it's good for people that are trying to kick the habit of smoking, sure, but either way, you're inhaling some toxic chemical that's going to damage your body in some fashion.
And I mean, so much study has been done on cigarettes that, you can look up exactly what's in a cigarette. I mean, there's tar and stuff in that. And I think marketing e-cigs less towards, recreational e-cig usage and more towards, I've seen marketing towards recovering smoke addicts. And that is a much more important thing, I think, is marketing it towards, smoking addicts who need to recover because it allows them to recover from that a little bit better. But I mean, there's definitely a lot more to be done in terms of surveys and studies. And we'll have to see where this goes in the coming years, whether lead becomes legalized fully across the nation or not, and how politics sways that. But, for now, we'll have to let this one sit, kind of let it ride out. And I think right now we should move on to our next article. And for our second article today, we're going to talk about ultralight gloves that let users touch virtual objects in virtual reality using an Oculus Rift or an HTC Vive, something like that. And this technology is really cool to me because here on campus, I actually have used a virtual reality simulator we have for my club to model parts, and you can play with it with an Oculus Rift to kind of see how it'll fit with the overall project and work. But this is really cool because it gives you gloves that weigh less than a mitten. I mean, this is revolutionary in terms of weight for...
It's like 8 grams per finger, right?
Yeah, it's 8 grams per finger, which is that's awesome because you can create that sense of feeling. And it's not that much different than putting on a glove in the winter and walking outside.
Well, I actually am looking at the photo for this thing. It looks like it has either some kind of flex sensor on it, or possibly it's like a metal sheet that holds back your finger, so it can make you feel like you're actually holding an object that has dimensions on it.
Yeah, that definitely looks like a resistance band on there that'll pull it back. And I've seen this before. This has been used for people with disabilities in their hands. And this kind of looks like that device, but instead of controlling your hand, it's giving feedback to your hand through this method of haptic feedback into your fingers by, I think what it does is it tightens up this band electronically.
Yep.
And so it'll pull your finger back with an amount of force that is resistant or is relevant to whatever you're holding. Yeah,
I actually saw this technology earlier in a video by a guy on YouTube called Smarter Every Day. He went to a company called Haptx, Haptx, and they had a glove that probably was way bigger than this. It looked really bulky. It went into this huge box, but on it had little inflatable, I guess bladders would be the best way to say what they are, because all it was is just pressurized air that would make it feel like there's tactile movement on each finger all the way down the hand. And then it also had those sheets of metal that would hold your fingers back once you hold an object.
Yeah, and looking at this again, it's an electrostatic reaction that helps it. So what it does is it kind of acts like a brake on these strips, so it'll stop the strip from moving, and that keeps it from moving. So you're kind of getting that resistance through electrostatic, but the thing is instead of being mechanical, that allows it to slide a little bit. So if you push harder, you can overcome that electrostatic attraction.
Yeah, and there's the Haptx Incorporated, they're still working on the glove itself. They haven't actually released it to a consumer market yet. I wouldn't be surprised if this ultralight glove is going to be ready until probably 2030.
I'd give it a little earlier than that. I'd almost say, we could see a good functioning prototype 2020. Well, maybe mid 2020s.
Well, I mean, we've already got the Leap Motion, which is something you can slap on to the front of the Vive or the front of the Oculus Rift, and it measures and is able to track your hands so long as they're in front of the sensor, almost as if basically you can move your fingers naturally, but you won't be able to get that resistance like you do with the other gloves. So you can still interact and grab objects, you just won't be able to use a controller at all.
Yeah,
which is pretty nice.
It's going to be interesting to see where this goes. It's coming out of Europe, which is some of the science that comes out of Germany, Switzerland, these places, they progress it super fast.
Yeah.
And this is out of Zurich, and these universities, and I believe they're not even universities, they could be, I believe these are just companies working on this. And, I don't know what their exact, uses are for this, but I'd imagine it's in the industry to give people a chance to work with their products before they build them, because some people are creating products that are just so large and they cost so much that you need to play with it a little bit in virtual reality to ensure that you don't have tolerance issues or anything like that.
Right.
But, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where this technology goes and how it makes it a different way in the world, both in the gaming market, the industry, and just in the consumer market. What devices could we see? Could we see this used in movie theaters to create a sense of the ultimate immersion in a movie? But, it's definitely a few years out, and it's definitely something we'll have to watch to see where it goes.
Yeah.
But it's going to be an interesting thing to see develop. And I think with that, we should talk about our next article.
All right, so next up we've got something electrical enhancement. This comes to us from Science Daily. Engineers speed up electrons in semiconductors. This came out October 17th, coming out of Tokyo University of Agriculture and Technology. They've been able to speed up the movement of electrons in organic semiconductor films by about 2 to 3 orders of magnitude. This could lead to improved solar power and transistor use across the world.
And I think that's kind of awesome because right now the movement of electricity in our world's a big thing. You know, we're creating a lot of electricity, not enough, honestly. And this would allow us to use renewables a little bit more efficiently.
Oh, totally.
And, you know, the way that they're doing this with semi-crystalline polymers is really cool because it just creates it's a flexible chain. So, you know, these don't have to look like your standard
Solar
semiconductors.
panels.
I mean, it's not going to look like you think because of that. And it would be awesome to see how this impacts actual technology in the real world. You know, will we see super high efficiency solar panels? Obviously, we got to work on the actual structure of the solar cell.
Like, what's the efficiency right now? Like 6 to 8%?
It's like 8 or 9%.
Low?
It's super low. And I mean, that's still a lot of energy. But I think I saw if we created a solar farm the size of like a quarter of the Sahara right now, we'd power the world.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good. That'd actually be really great.
And it's like that kind of thinking, you know. So that's only with like that's with like a 15% efficiency, which we could see in the next decade.
Oh, totally. I mean, I think the reason that semiconductors with this stuff is actually going to be really interesting, like organic semiconductors, is probably a better path because we're already starting to get down to near atomic levels with the actual metals that we're using with silicon, for example. I mean, we could transfer over to something like graphene, which has a smaller atomic radius, but even then, we're still going to hit that lower limit because you can't make semiconductors that are smaller than atoms.
Yeah, that's the trick. And I mean, that'll be interesting to see, you know, how they're going to propose this, the size they're thinking of, you know, where they're planning to use this first.
Well, the best thing that would probably come out of this is if we can get this on a mass production or some kind of scale that is more efficient than the current semiconductor industry right now. For these organic semiconductors, if they are able to be created at either a more cost-effective or a more mass-producible level, then we could see these being deployed, like you said, over the Sahara Desert to possibly power the entire world.
And I think this could be a lot cheaper.
Oh, totally.
But the trick is having that research done. I see this being a world-renowned, like a worldwide thing. I'd say 2 decades. We'd see this more standardized, but you know, it really depends on how long this research takes and what they decide. Because
True.
I mean, scientists are still working with carbon nanotubes and graphene, but I've seen that stuff. I've seen graphene in the market for a few years now.
Like, actual graphene?
Actual graphene
That you can buy.
You can buy, but the trick is it's expensive.
Oh, totally.
And it's not in large quantities. It's used to, you know, reinforce some products.
Like actual sheets of graphene, not just
Yep.
like little squares.
Yep,
Because
so-
I actually messed around with that a little bit and tried making little tiny squares.
So there's a couple of ski companies that actually use it because of its rebound ability.
You talked about this last week, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, that shows that some of these technologies, if something is useful for money, it's going to get picked up fast. And I
Nice.
think this is definitely profitable for, you know, any sort of solar company or really any electronics company could be using this. And
All
it's
right.
got so many uses that I think this could be a huge hit in the next few years.
All right, sweet. We want to move on to our next article here.
I think we should.
All right, so we're going to end with mathematics. This is coming from Computer Science with new ways to defend against the Spectre and Meltdown attacks that have been plaguing us for the past couple of. I think when did these attacks first come out? When did the white papers for these attacks come out? I forget. Like late 2017, something
I
rather.
think that sounds about right.
So-
we saw these kind of become a big thing. I think it was just last year. It feels like a while, but it looks like about last year, maybe 2 years.
Because
ago.
this is interesting because it's a timing attack coming from the processor. This isn't something coming from memory. This isn't something coming from an external hardware issue like a USB rubber ducky. This is coming from internally, like from the processors themselves. This is Intel, right? These were Intel processors that were compromised?
Yeah, it was Intel processors back in 2016.
Okay.
And it was from their cache allocation technology that kind of led to this happening. And, you know, it's definitely going to be interesting to see, because when this sort of stuff happens, a lot of companies have Intel processors. And, if it's in the enterprise processors, that's going to be a big deal for some of these companies that rely on them for their daily functions and use them for secure banking, transactions, or just like consumer files. If you're keeping data and you're vulnerable to an attack from within your own system, that's a big deal.
Yeah, well, the attacks still exist, but even though the companies released patches for it, like for Windows, Linux, and Mac, they all released patches to help protect against this attack. It still exists out there for certain servers, certain mainframes. For whatever reason, people would still be using mainframes, and other processors that would possibly still be at risk that either haven't had a patch yet. I can't see why over the past 2 years, but this is good that we now actually have a more solid protection, because
I mean, and the thing is, this is a lot easier to protect against, because in the past 2 decades we've gotten a lot better at detecting these attacks, and it's also less common to see these attacks because code wasn't written as great as it was now. People got a little more lazy with their code back in the day. They weren't as precise with their code. They weren't, as well versed with it. And we've seen a growth of people who have gotten much better at coding. And by doing that, they're eliminating these errors that could happen that would be causing these external attacks and even internal attacks. And I think that, some people would call some of these errors, but some would also call them attacks. And, it's definitely interesting to know that there's such an interesting science behind cybersecurity. It's
cryptography and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's definitely interesting it's going to be interesting to see how this sort of system and how they're going to deploy against it.
Yeah.
I mean, they understand what happens with this, and
like, I barely understand it.
I mean, I can't understand it at all. You're far more versed in this than I am.
Oh, yeah.
But it's going to be interesting to see how these timing attacks they're going to have to be reacted against, because you can't predict a timed attack. That's the trick. They're going to be able to defend against it.
You can't really predict any attack coming from a hacker unless they tell you that it's coming.
Exactly. So that's why they have to I think they need more methods of detection. If you get detection far away where your server data is coming in, if you can get protection out there, that's far more useful than having your protection at the door. Because when someone's already banging at your door, you can't get them away.
Okay, that's the thing, though, is with how hackers operate. They do a process of enumeration where they try and find as many. They go through IP blocks. They go through all this data to try and track out and find vulnerable areas, whether that be a server farm, whether that be a singular computer that hasn't had a patch update, or that could be a singular person that is particularly vulnerable to social engineering, for example. And I like how one of our teachers tells us that we might have a hack-proof world in 10 to 20 years. I don't believe that one bit, because there's the human aspect of security is always going to be the weakest link.
I think the only way we could ever have a hack-proof world is if we hire the hackers.
If
you can pay a hacker more to defend against other hackers, you're going to dissuade the other hackers.
No, see, as long as you have enough time and money, or even just time, someone will get through your system. It'll just take a lot of resources and a lot of time to do so.
Yeah, and I think that's a fundamental thing in the world where it's going to take. It takes time to solve these issues.
True.
And it takes about the same time to crack these issues.
Yeah.
People are going to crack into these things as soon as they get solved. And that's a big deal. So, with that, we'll have to see where this one goes. I'm not well-versed in this. Grayson's far more well-versed in this than I am.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm far more into hardware than software. He's very good at software.
I wouldn't say...
You're better than I am.
I just have a hacker mindset. I like making things do what they're not supposed to do.
Yeah, I think we both have tinkerer mindsets and maker mindsets. But it's this... this will be interesting to watch, because this does affect just about everybody. I mean, most people have this, and it's going to be interesting to see.
All right, sounds good. You want to talk about this funny article that we found out?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, which one do you want to go with? We actually found two funny articles this week.
Yeah, what's the one that you had?
Well, I found one. This is actually completely out of our realm. This is in the kind of liberal arts category, but an artist named Banksy
Banksy.
Banksy. I can't even pronounce his name. That shows how much I pay attention to art.
Yeah.
He had a painting where it was actually supposed to be shredded at the end of the auction. So he
It's supposed to be at the end of the auction?
Yeah.
I thought it was supposed to be shredded when they hit like when they hit $1 million.
Nope. So when the bid closed and the gavel hit the actual when the gavel struck, the shredding was supposed to start.
Okay.
And it malfunctioned, so
Oh.
it only shredded half the painting.
What?
So they completely failed in their idea, and it was supposed to work, and it definitely showed it work. They had tested it; it was shown to work. But I mean, now there's theories going around that possibly it was on purpose. That he did this.
I'm pretty sure the auction house had denied any being in on any of it, right?
Yeah, I think that they denied it, but I think that people are saying that now he only shredded half his work. It's kind of a whole new piece of work.
Oh, pretty much. It's what's the name of it? Love in the Bin or something?
Girl with a balloon.
Girl with a Balloon, but it's been shredded now, so it's been renamed because it's a different.
Yeah,
piece
Love
of
is
art.
in the bin.
Love is in the bin.
And so it's definitely it's really interesting to see this kind of stuff where people are thinking like, well, I paint this, it's worth $1 million, but if I shred half of it, I think it sold for 1.4 million.
See, I think with Banksy, he's a little bit more of he's more of a social commentator than anything else, and I still don't get his message behind this. I still don't really understand the message behind shredding a painting that's worth $1 million.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's something about the auctioneers themselves. Who knows?
And I'm not sure. It could be there's so many things that I don't understand about this kind of art. This could be a message to the world. It could be, an expression of an idea. It could just be, I wanted to shred my painting. And that's something that's kind of funny, I think, that, you definitely could do this.
Yeah, comment down below if what your thoughts are on Banksy shredding his own painting.
And, it's pretty easy to find. You can just take a stroll on Google. You'll find it pretty quick. And it's going to be interesting to see, is there going to be charges pressed against the court, against the auction house or anything like that?
Why would there be charges pressed against it?
I'm not sure. There were speculation
They
could have been.
They denied that though. They denied that and I think Banksy had confirmed that as well himself on his own Twitter Instagram page, one of the two.
Yeah, this is actually a really simple piece of engineering, but it's really interesting to see it done in this field.
Yeah, nice. All right.
Well, I think that just about wraps up this week.
All right. I'm Grayson.
I'm Josh.
This is Delta Y. Stay creative, and we will see y'all next time.
And one final thought, guys. We do have a Twitter and a YouTube channel coming up soon. So if you could go over head to Twitter, we'll post our link below, but we are Y_Delta on Twitter. Get a randomly assigned name. You have to live with it. And we also have a Patreon that is below. If you like our work and you want to help us become a little bit better, get better equipment, and bring more news to you, definitely hit us up on Patreon. We will be releasing soon some benefits for Patreon pledges, and we'd love to see your support for us. We actually enjoy a lot what we do, and we just want to thank you for listening in to us this week, and we hope you tune back next week with our next set of articles and our next set of thoughts. Thank you very much.